and get started. Hey, how's it going? I'm General Vivi, and today I'm going to be going over my newest prototype in a series of prototypes called the Radi-Ant. Not to be confused with the editor. This is a spawn off of the normal antlion AI, and I'm just trying to manipulate it a little bit and give it a little oomph, trying out some new things here. So let's go ahead and talk about what it is and how it works in the different stages. So the Radi-Ant is like a mutated version of the antlion that can live in sewage areas. It lives underneath the sewage and can just spring up and attack the player. Its main forms of attack is a kamikaze attack, and it basically charges the player and explodes and leaves behind this deadly radiation sac that's harmful to the player. And I'll go ahead and show you that real quick. So the different stages of the Radi-Ant, there's a few different stages. There's an idle stage, and then there's an attack stage. So only two stages. But so in its idle state, it has a few things going on here. So we have some effects playing that let the player know, hey, there's something underneath the water here. You know, we have spores, usually associated with antlions, and the what's it called? The bug bait, the pteropods. The other bit is the bit in the idle state is there's a bit that detects damage to see if the player actually is using like grenades or anything like that, because you can actually kill the antlion in its idle state before it even gets a chance to attack you. So it's a little bit of a cool mechanic there for the player to outsmart the antlion here. Let me see. And the attack state basically looks like this. Once I get close or close enough into a radius, it unburrows and attacks me. So now if I let it get too close to me, it will go into its attack, its explosion animation, and blow up. There it goes, leaving behind a harmful radiation sac when I get too close. Ouch, ouch. Hurts me a little bit. And now I can't actually hurt the radiation sac with the normal guns. I have to burn it with fire. Burn it with fire! So I'm going to go ahead and use my gravity gun and punt it into that flame in the background, and that puts it out. And now it's just an empty shell. I can now move on and do whatever else I want to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the editor and see how I did this and what are the different steps I took to make this as easy as possible. And let's go ahead and switch over to the editor. Actually going to go ahead and put that music back on. So, let's look at the different pieces I've got here. I think there's about 4 in total. We have our spawn locations, which are right here. This is where the antlion will spawn. I have the flame and the trigger for the flame in the background here. And underneath the map, tucked away, in a nice little nook in our no draw boxes, are our bomb, which the antlion drops, which is the radiation sac, and then we also have the Radi-Ant itself. So you might be wondering why I separated them, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But let's go ahead and dive into the spawn locations. So I have 2 points, 2-point templates here. One of them's for the initial idle effects like the spores and the water effects, and the other template actually spawns the Radi-Ant in and burrows it underneath the water. So the reason why I have 2 is because there's a lot of entities involved, and it's just easier to split them up and keep things a little bit more organized. The other bit to that is the thing that I find interesting about this, and just keeping things tidy, is that I just share the name between them. Let me go ahead and bring up my properties for that. Capture. Alright, so as you can see, both of these share the same name, which makes things a little bit easier when I want to go ahead and spawn in an antlion, or a Radi-Ant, as I'm calling them. I can just call one name, which is really nice. And the other bit to that is that it's just easier to duplicate. When I want to go ahead and like move this over and rename everything, it's just whoop, and then I can just change the name on it, and everything's ready to go. I can spawn a brand new Radi-Ant in. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. One of the questions that I get when I have this set up is, why don't you have all of the scripting in the map? You know, why do I have the antlion over here in a small box on its own? Why don't I have it just right here, you know, out of a box, just, you know, in the map so I can see where it is and everything? So there's a few things behind that. One, it's easier to manage all these really complex, all the really complex scripting behind the Radi-Ant off to the side. And when I go ahead and duplicate this, it doesn't clutter up the map, and I don't have to worry about where all the different Radi-Ants are and all their entities and things like that. And I can keep it real nice, simple on the grid, and it keeps the map less cluttered. The other part is the spawn locations. I don't have to update these. So like if I used all the complex scripting for that, I wanted to have them facing a certain way when they spawned, I would have to, you know, duplicate the entities, then rotate them, and make sure that I'd have to redo all the spawn locations over again anytime I changed the prefab for the antlion. This way I can just drop this here, and this will always be here, and I won't have to update that. So that's really nice. I think just in general, you know, it's much cleaner this way. So let's go ahead and talk about the ant prefab itself. So obviously I already showed you there's a little no draw box down here that I keep it in. That's mostly just so when I finish the map and it's sealed up, none of these entities are considered leaked, which breaks the map. So, digging down into this, I have a few things here that actually make up the antlion. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of these things. So these are just the water effects, and they're just kind of in the way. I keep things really nice and compact, which can be really confusing when you're trying to, like, if you're not me, who I mean, I know obviously what all these things do, but you know, if I was going to have other people work on this, I'd probably clean up this view a tiny bit more so that somebody else could easily decipher this. But I did separate out a few things. One, we've got our trigger here. This is what the player or other NPCs will walk into, right? I'm gonna go ahead and hide that. We have some script conditions here, and this is actually what tells the antlion it's ready to explode. This says, like, you know, I've got the conditions are basically, is the antlion close to the player, have they been there for a little bit, and is the player looking at him? And now and then once that happens, it sends out a signal to this relay, which actually has all of the bits in it that tell it what to do. The next bit here is the scripted sequence, which actually just it just plays an animation, just plays a taunt animation. It doesn't actually it doesn't need the antlion to move anywhere. It just, wherever the antlion is when the explosion needs to occur, it just plays this animation, which is the distract animation. Since I'm not making any custom things here, I think this worked out really well. It was nice and simple, and basically looks like a taunt, or like, hey, I'm about to do something, you know. So that worked out real nice. Go ahead and hide these things. The next bit here is, let me see, I'm gonna unhide this. So I have a brush down here, and this is the brush that sits above the water and detects whether or not the player has thrown a grenade or done any kind of explosion damage right above where the antlion is. Because what I wanted to do was I wanted to give the player the opportunity, and I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to give the player the opportunity to outsmart the antlion, and if they had some grenades, I wanted them to be able to use it and blow up the antlion ahead of time. There's a lot more that goes into this, but the basic simple... It's basically a simple box that detects whether or not it has damage or not. Another interesting bit here, the antlion, most of these items, like the spore clouds and things like that, all these things are parented to the antlion because when it blows up, the bomb or the radiation sac needs to know where to spawn and where the antlion is. So I have a template that spawns the bomb, and the template is parented to the antlion. Now, there's some ghetto scripting here because I found out through some trials that there's two different ways that the antlion can die. Or there's three, but we'll just talk about the two. One, when it dies, it leaves a ragdoll behind. And that's fine, you know, everything works fine, nothing gets deleted. But if the antlion explodes, it actually deletes all the children that are parented to it, which can cause an issue if I want to spawn the bomb in on the Radi-Ant when it explodes. If it's deleted all the entities when it explodes, I can't spawn anything on it because there's nothing there anymore. So I actually had to do a little bit of ghetto scripting here, and what I mean by that is a lot of programmers would probably shake their heads at this, but since I am doing everything in entities only and not coding it, this is the way I had to do it. So let me hide some of these things here. So you see this little bit here. This is a physics constraint, and basically what that does is I have a brush that I'm like a small little square brush. Let me unhide everything again. I have a small little square brush in here. There we go. So this little brush right here is what actually everything's parented to, and then I physics constrain that brush to the antlion. So there's a little physics constraint that has this tiny brush that's just like a little pouch that's on top of the antlion. So when it runs around, this brush is always with it, and with that brush is everything that's parented to it. So when the antlion dies, if it dies by explosion, the physics constraint dies, but the brush still lives because it's not parented directly to the antlion. It was being constrained to the antlion, so it's not directly being controlled child-parent, which is nice, so that when it explodes, that's still there, and everything else that I need to take place can take place without the threat of being deleted. I have this like weird feeling that like there's just like some programmers out there, they're just glaring on me. They're just like, why would you do this? Well, there's a few reasons. Mostly because I'm mad about entities, but the other part is, you know, if I wanted to take this past prototype phase and I don't code, this is the only way that's possible at the moment. So let me see. Yeah, that's about it for that. Let's go ahead and let me see. Is there anything else? So we've got our particles for our water and spores. That's when it's in its idle state. We've got our case here that just kind of cycles between them. And we've got a relay that cleans up all the entities. So when this antlion dies, I want to make sure I clean up everything. So this goes ahead and kills every entity that it was with. That way it cleans up and there's not just like a whole bunch of entities bloating the map and filling it up. So eventually I might run out of RAM or space or something. So let's just clean up protocol that I usually do on big expensive things like this. Let's go ahead and move over to the bomb prefab. So the bomb prefab, or the radiation sac as I've been calling it, this is a neat little thing. I only have one in the entire map for everything. So every Radi-Ant that I spawn uses this, and I only need one because the way that it works is anytime one spawns, it automatically renames itself to be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So each bomb has its own properties, and doesn't need to be messed with. And I can spawn these individually as well. I'll show you that later, but I can have as many of these as I want, and none of them interact with each other. Like, if I put this bomb out, if I throw it into a fire, it won't put out the other radiation stacks in the area. So each one is independent, and each Radi-Ant spawns one of these independently of another one. So that's really nice. Let me see, anything special about this? We've got the trigger for the radius, so when the player goes inside, they get hurt. I have a bunch of spore effects and cloud effects that give visual feedback to the player on where the hurt trigger is. So there's all these clouds right here are basically the same size as the sphere trigger. So when the player gets close to the cloud, it's very obvious why you're getting hurt. Let me see. There's the prop that I have that represents the sack, and the important thing about this when I was prototyping was to make sure that it had different what do I want to call this, like different states, right? So there's an on state and there's an off state, and that allows me to show the player, when they've burnt it or when it's no longer there. This is pretty straightforward and simple. Like I said, the great thing about this is it's all independent though, so the way that I built this, just makes it real nice. And this filter entity here pretty much makes all of that possible. And to wrap everything up with that, I'll explain what this filter does and why it helps everything so much. So to look at the fire that actually puts out the bomb, the way that this works is it's a trigger multiple. It has the filter that is with the bomb, and it only gets triggered by the bomb entity itself. So like the prop that I have, this trigger will only be able to get touched by the bomb prop itself. And then when it gets triggered, I do a search for all filters in the map. So any bombs that exist in the map at this current time, it'll test their filter to see if they were actually the one that touched the trigger. And what's great about that is what it does is it's like, okay, if I threw a bomb in there and the filter got tested, right, and it goes, oh hey, are you the activator that touched this? And if you are, go ahead and pretend to be burned and do all the things that I needed to if it's touching a fire, and it'll only attack the activator of the trigger. So if I have a whole bunch of bombs, it'll only affect the one that is touching it at that current time, which is really great. Because this whole setup, generally I feel like a lot of people would just go ahead and make a new trigger. So like they would be like, this will be for bomb 1, and then they'll make another trigger on top of that, and they'll go, okay, well this one will look for bomb 2, and depending on how many bombs you'll have in the map, you might have like 10 triggers, maximum. But this way, I only need one trigger, and I don't even need to rename it or anything. If I want to have multiple triggers or multiple fires, it's as simple as just shift dragging. And there you go. Now if that bomb touches this one, it'll go out, and all the other ones. It works just like that. And we're crashing. This is great. This is good. This is strong character building right here. Let me go ahead and load that back up. But that's the basics of how everything kind of works together. It's real easy to create as many ant lines as I need as well. Let me see, get everything back up here. Sorry about that. So let me go ahead and show you what it would be like if I wanted to create more than one Radi-Ant in a level. It's very simple. Unfortunately, the Radi-Ants, I can't just spawn the same template over and over again. I have to actually create another Radi-Ant prefab in order for that to work. If there's something wrong with the way that the naming conventions work, or the way that the AI, it interacts with the AI when it spawns. Not really sure. I did a lot of tests to try and fix that, but unfortunately I couldn't. So the only way to do this, because of the way that the Half-Life 2 Episode 2 editor works, I don't have instancing, so I can't just make this one instance and then use the instancing method to auto-rename everything. I actually have to go ahead and duplicate it. And in order to do that and make everything real nice and simple and easy, I actually use this cool little widget called the rename widget. Let me see if I get that up here. There you go. So let me fix my editor viewport here. So this little widget here is real nice. If I want to create a brand new Radi-Ant, I've actually tried to play a little bit smart here, and I've put an _1 at the end of all of my entities here. Let me bring up the property window. So as you can see, there's like a simple _1, and that goes at the end of everything. And what that allows me to do with this cool little find and replace menu is just change that _1 to an _2, and then I have a brand new set without having to go through and hand pick everything. This is just a huge time saver. In the past, just duplicating one Radi-Ant and making a brand new one could take like 30 minutes, you know, because you have to go and worry about all the inputs and outputs and, oh, did I name this right, or, you know, whatever. So let me go ahead and show you what this looks like. I'm just gonna shift drag, create a new one. You have to switch from group mode to object mode. Sometimes it doesn't work. And I'm gonna go ahead and find _1 and replace it with _2. Hopefully you guys can see that over here. I know text might be small. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my find in selection instead of doing entire file, because I don't want to rename all _1s in the entire file. I just want to do the selections. So I'm going to go ahead and hit replace all. And you guys don't see it, but there's a little window here that's replaced 100 occurrences of string _1 with _2, and that automatically filters in my outputs and inputs for all the things that are affected by this prefab. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and I'm going to hide that really quick. And there's one thing that I need to fix. I'm going to go in here and let's see, here's my properties again. Got to create another window for this. So I want to make sure that I fix the template so that way when the antlion needs to explode and drop a bomb, that it looks at the proper one. So I set that back to 1. Just because when I rename everything, the _1 changes to a 2, but I only need 1 bomb for everything, so I have to make sure that this template points to the correct template. So unhide, hit save. Now all I have to do is grab my my spawn points here. I'm gonna go ahead and move this guy over here. Make some more room for this. Change that, and I'm gonna go ahead and do my find and replace. Do an _1 to an _2. Hit replace all. It says it changed 4 occurrences. That's great. I'm gonna double check to make sure that that's correct. Great, it looks good. Now when I hit my button over here, my little test button, I want to make sure that that spawns the next antlion. So I'm going to go ahead and copy paste that script and just change that to template 2, hit save, and do a quick compile. We are done. Now I'm going to move over to Half-Life 2. Okie doke. Restart. And hopefully everything worked out. Alright, so we got 2 spore clouds now. I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see it. So we've got our one over here, and it seems to be splashing just fine. And this one over here, that one's also splashing. Let's make sure that no duplicate here. Alright, cool. And I'm just going to go ahead and show you. So I get too close to both of these. They'll both chase me now. Alright, cool. Now I've got 2 bombs here. And I can just punt this guy over here to the fire. And he goes out without affecting this one. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring this one over. And like I said, both of these bombs here are still using the exact same prefab that I showed you. Just the one. It's just auto renaming them. And there we go. So that was real nice and simple. It took me less than a minute to duplicate and rename everything. And I really like that workflow. I always strive to like make sure that either my prototypes or my final implementations of entity work it sets me up in such a way that allows for quick and easy reiteration, and I really like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump back to the editor and show you something real quick. Close that. So like I said earlier, you can make bombs as well, because I don't need anything special to create them, and they all use the same entity. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom over here to one of my ant lions and just hide this and just grab the correct template, this one right here. So now all I gotta do, I'm just gonna rename this. Go ahead and bring up the property window again. I have to always create a new window capture for this. Don't know why. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and rename this to the radiation sac. And looks like everything's fine. It's got some outputs on it. I'm just gonna go ahead and delete those. Close that out. I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this around a couple of times here. Maybe put like a few up here. You know, maybe that one. Oh yeah, that'll be a good spot. And one lining up with the fire. That way I can just put it in there. Alright, now I'm gonna open up the properties for our test button. I'm gonna go ahead and add in on trigger radiation sac spawn. And that will spawn all of my radiation sacs that I have in the level that I want. And if you don't want all of them to spawn at the same time, it's as easy as just _1, and then I can just make that one spawn at a different time. So if we do radiation sac copy paste, radiation sac _1, let's have this one spawn 5 seconds after the other ones do. Hit save, compile real quick. And I'm gonna go ahead and restart. Oop, let me go ahead and make sure we're over here. Okay, so now when I hit the button, we're gonna have 2 antlions spawn, and we're gonna have a bunch of the radiation sacs spawn as well, and then one should spawn 5 seconds after the others. So there they go, they all spawned, and where's the other one at? Boop, oh, well it spawned, but it fell through the map. Okay, so as you can see, all of them are spawned. Now I could change their orientation. You can see as they're all facing upward. I could actually just rotate each one individually on the template to make sure that they all have different angles and things like that. But I'm gonna go ahead and check it. Yep, this one hurts me. I put it in the fire, and it doesn't affect the other ones. That's great. That's good news. Oop, I spawned the guy in. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to go ahead and kill this guy with the shotgun. As you can see, his entity still spawns even though his children were killed because of that physics constraint that we're using. Go ahead and give those guys a little taste. And I mean, that's about it. It's really nice, real simple. Like I said, if you build things out properly in the editor, it really helps in the long run. Now I can make an army of radiation sacs in my level, and I don't have to worry about creating a brand new one and having all the entities clutter everything up. It's real nice and simple. Go back to the editor here. Yeah, and everything was just pretty straightforward, you know. And if I want to change the angle of how this Radi-Ant spawns in, I can do that directly on his properties. So let me open those up real quick, and I'll just show you. So on the properties here, you have the pitch, roll, pitch, yaw, and roll. And right now it's just facing straight down, but what I can do is I can change that so he faces the other way. And now when he spawns in, he'll go directly this way. And that's kind of neat. It makes it so, you know, if you're doing like a linear experience, you know, and you know which way the player is going to be coming at the antlion, it's nice to always have him sort of jump and lunge at the player. It's kind of a cool little moment. I'm gonna go ahead and restart so I can show you that. As you can see, he jumps out facing backwards and he doesn't know that I'm even here. It's fine. Cool. Well, that about does it for this tutorial and the explanation on how I did this. If you have any questions or want to check out the map file, I should have a download link to it pretty soon on the site. So if you want to do that, you can go ahead and check that out. If you have any questions, hit me up at generalvv@hotmail.com. I should be able to get back to you pretty soon. And thanks for watching.